Hello and welcome to Car Dealer Live. I'm James Baggett, I'm the founder of Car Dealer Magazine, and today on the show I'm chatting with John Head and Jamie Crowther from Marshall Motor Group. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
Nice to see you both. Right now, I'm going to give you a quick introduction. Firstly, I probably don't need to tell you, but for Marshalls, they're one of the UK's biggest dealer groups. They've got 119 dealerships representing 24 manufacturers, and it's also one of the oldest, having been established back in 1909. Now, earlier this week, the group's chief executive, Dash Gupta, told us he's predicting a loss for the first half of 6 months of 2020, but he's confident he can turn that around in the second half of this year. John is the commercial director and joined the Marshall family in 2016 when the group bought Ridgeway's portfolio of dealers, where he'd been since 2007. And before that, he held the role of sales director for Inchcape's 14 Mercedes-Benz sites. Jamie's director of operations and joined Marshall Motor Group in 2014 after 8 years as managing director of Peter Vardy and 17 years as its predecessor, Reg Vardy. Hopefully I got that right, guys. Nice to see you both. Thank you very much for joining us. But let's go a little bit into those backgrounds. John, I'll start with you. What started you off in the motor trade?
Crikey, a few years ago now. I know I don't look that old, but I am really. I actually followed my father's footsteps. My father was a director at Henley's, and I actually followed his footsteps. He said it's a great trade, a great industry, and I needed to try it. So I actually joined on the YTS scheme. That's a distant past, but yeah, I actually started on the YTS scheme in Leicester, a company called Castles, and then progressed all the way, I guess, the traditional side through sales exec, sales manager, or business manager, sales manager, onto head of business, and then with Inchcape, sales director for the Mercedes sites, and that's where I first got to work with Dash. So you've
worked with Dash before, or you've worked with him now?
Worked with Dash for probably now, crikey, it's got to be 12, 13 years. If you told them together. So he obviously couldn't be away from me, so he bought Ridgeway. That's what he keeps telling me.
So, John, do you enjoy the job?
I love the job. It's very different. It's very challenging, more challenging now than probably a long time I can remember. It's a new norm, isn't it, that we're looking at? But yeah, look, once you're in it, it's a difficult one to get out of, I find. But yeah, no, I love it. It's just very challenging, very challenging.
What's your favourite thing about the job?
What's the favourite thing? Just making a difference, you know, and anything we can do at our level, we can make a difference, you know, whether that's to performance or culture. And I think that for me is, well, I get the most pleasure when you actually see that you're making a difference. You know, it's not boring. It's never boring. And certainly not now.
No. Jamie, let me turn to you and ask you the same question. I mean, what got you involved in the motor trade back when you started?
So I started as a trainee sales exec with JCT a long time ago. It was Jack taught off then rather than John. Almondbury BMW in Huddersfield, where I started, and then I joined. So I couldn't really advance there because the general manager and my boss, the sales manager, were going to be there for the long haul. So I joined a then fledgling Reg Vardy as a sales manager in BMW in Harrogate, and then moved through Reg Vardy and then started up with Peter, Sir Peter's son, as a new start when Pendragon made the Reg Vardy acquisition and started in year. So I went through working for a large organised PLC to, I guess, what was a startup company. So saw both sides of it. Very exciting.
Jamie, tell me a little bit about your role now and what's it involved.
Operations director. So obviously looking after a lot of franchises for the group, full P&L responsibility, and I also oversee the sort of retail compliance committee as well to make sure we've got a handle on compliance.
What do you like the most about the motor trade?
For me, I think I tried a couple of jobs before I got into the motor trade, and also briefly before joining Dash at Marshall, I tried to take a bit of time out, but Dash forced me into starting. And I did work briefly with a friend of mine in an engineering business, and it was just very slow, quite dull. So I guess for me, it's the constant change and the variety. And obviously, as John just said, never more than now.
John, clearly dealerships opened up again this week. We're all very happy to be back at the coalface. What's it been like being back at work?
John. Was that John or Jamie? Sorry, I think it was
John,
John.
yeah, John, please. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, could you say that? Perhaps
Yeah, John, I was saying dealerships back open again, back open today, back open this week. What's it been like being back at work?
It's been different. I mean, we didn't actually get any time off over the period. In fact, we probably worked harder than ever. So actually coming back into the dealership environment is different because it is a new norm. We'll probably talk about it later. But the structure of the business now, how it's laid out, is completely different. It's a different feel. What is pleasing is how the staff are approaching it. So the staff that we've got back here are energised, are actually genuinely pleased to be back at work. So there's a different feel about the business, albeit on a lesser scale of colleagues, in terms of how many.
I think we might have lost on there a little bit, Jamie. Jamie, perhaps you could just pick up.
It's nice. It's nice for time.
Yeah. Sorry, James, gone.
Sorry, yeah, just so John knows, we lost you a little bit there, John. So I'm just going to.
I would echo that. As John said, we haven't had any downtime, so we've been spending a lot of time. Clearly, as we went into lockdown, in terms of getting the sites closed, and then we spent the rest of the last couple of months, I guess, going through strategy about when we reopen. Loads of work going on behind the scenes. What's it going to look like? Managing through the furlough scheme and how to maximise that, and also maximise the opportunity that we have. And I think, as John said, people are really, really keen to get back to work. And it's quite interesting, this job, because you are never really off. We're on. Even if you're on holiday, there's always work at the back of your mind. And I think for the colleagues that have been furloughed, they've had a proper break, because we've not been allowed to contact them. We've been giving them information and updates. But other than that, no emails, no work. So they've had a proper rest and are coming back all the more excited for it.
Well, John was just about to touch on it there, but Jamie, perhaps you could pick it up on the sort of changes that you've had to put in place into dealerships. I mean, we've covered them quite extensively on Car Dealer Magazine website. What sort of things have you had to do, and which ones did you find the most challenging?
John, possibly a better place to answer this, but certainly the first thing we did was we did a full risk assessment of all the sites, and we then went through a massive organisation of what it's going to look like from the sites when we get back. So clearly the biggest thing in order was social distancing, keeping colleagues safe. I think the biggest challenge, and it's one that John's taken on personally, is getting all the PPE. So clearly we knew we were going to have to do it. Then we were trying to look at the resourcing of that, the cost of it, and making sure we've got all the right stuff delivered to the sites and set up in time. So in terms of unfurloughing colleagues, we brought our general managers and some support teams back sort of a couple of weeks now to get the sites set up. And then we were also working on things like instructional videos. Every colleague before the return to work had to go through an assessment on our learning management system, watch a suite of videos, and then answer questions, and they had to get 100% pass mark before they were allowed back into the sites. Then they were welcomed back by the general managers to go through an induction on the sites, because given we've got 130 odd sites, everyone's got its own peculiarities. So I think it's quite good doing all the hypothetical planning. That's really easy, and we rolled it all out. Dash, our CEO, did a video. John and I were supporting on that, and then of course all the individual questions come out, because we've done it all generically, and then what about my site, because the parts department doesn't fit this, etc., etc. So those are the real challenges, I guess.
It certainly sounds like quite a challenge. John, I just firstly check that you can hear me okay.
Yeah, all good. I've just changed network, so we should be okay now.
Okay, thank you. Well, I've just turned to you on that same point. I mean, it must have been very difficult to roll out these changes across such a large group. Did you find that a challenge?
Yeah, it was a challenge. I mean, obviously across 130 units or so. What we were lucky in that when we put the plan together, we were getting action plans from some of the fantastic manufacturers we represent. So a lot of it was very similar. And then we looked at the things, where could we do anything that would be slightly different? And then putting it all into a logical plan that flows the right way. And I think we've got there. I think that it's been welcomed back. It's been welcomed, by the colleagues. Certainly the feedback we've had, and certainly by when you see some of the pictures of the sites, they've got the message. We're very consistent on how we're applying it across site to site. And more importantly, the feedback from the colleagues that have been welcomed back is really positive. They understand it, they're getting it, they're following it. and that then falls in line with the customer feedback we're getting as well. It's really positive, but it was a challenge.
That was going to be my next point. I mean, in terms of the customers, how are they accepting these changes? Because for some people, I mean, you walk down the street, some people social distancing means nothing to them. So they're going to turn up your dealerships and you need to force them into doing stuff in a certain way. Are they sort of struggling to understand that?
No, I think the way we've got it is very clear. We give them a briefing. We try and meet them every time when they enter the business, and we give them an outline of what it looks like. And what their experience is going to be like. Any sales appointment, any service appointment, we've designed some videos that we send them at the point of making the appointment, so they know what to expect, albeit it's in a video, but they know what to expect when they arrive at the dealership. And I think I've been in a few businesses this week. I've seen no issue with social distancing at all, and people following it. There's very clear one-way systems, very clear stands with hand sanitizers, everything you would naturally expect. And we've got a duty to both customers and colleagues that it's got to be a safe experience, and it is. It really is, as best as it can be. We've done it really well. We're really positive.
Were you a little bit disappointed that it took the government so long to give dealerships the nod to open? Because I mean, clearly, we all knew that dealerships could set up just like supermarkets in a very safe way, and probably could have done that quite a long time ago.
Yes, I mean, we were eager to get back. We saw that there was online activity, so we'd set up our remote teams from sales. We were getting plenty of inquiries, and we were selling units. So we knew that there was still a market there. Absolutely, we wanted to get back as soon as we can. And just taking your point, we can do a job just like the supermarkets. I think we can actually do a better job than supermarkets in what we've got. And I think, I've been in Hook, as we said. There's 2 supermarkets. And they're not as safe as what we are, anywhere near.
Yeah. Well, and Jamie touched on this test that all of your staff need to take when they come back. I mean, it sounds like quite tough if you've got to get 100% pass mark. Did you pass it first time?
No, I passed first time, but to be fair, I should do because I helped write the questions. But I mean, they aren't trick questions. They're not there to catch anybody out, but they are there to make sure that there's absolute awareness of what the guidelines are and what we need to, our promises that we need to fulfill. So it's not tricky, I don't think, but I think we're not going to compromise on the health and safety aspect. So 100%, it wasn't even a debate as to what score it should be. It was always going to be 100%.
Jamie, what's business been like now you've been back at work for a few days?
It's been good. Obviously, I can't say too much about it, but we've been really encouraged by what we've seen so far. So in terms of inquiry levels and orders, it's actually been tremendous. But we've been cautious because it's only 3 days in. But we've been pleased with what we've seen so far. I think going back to the point that John made about social distancing and supermarkets, one of the challenges we're going to have with that is currently we've got circa 50% of our colleagues still on furlough. As we unfurlough those, we'll have some challenges to come in terms of maintaining social distancing. We've got some great sites, we've got some really big sites, and likewise some of them are a bit tighter. So I think it will become more difficult for us. We'll clearly manage it, but it will be a challenge for us.
Do you think you'll continue to allow people to work from home?
Where possible, yes. Clearly we've discussed it, and works for some people, but clearly doesn't work for large swathes of the population. So sales execs, some can work from home and support remotely. Sales administrators, a little bit, although that's more difficult. And then clearly where you've got service advisors dealing face-to-face and technicians, it just doesn't work at all. So yeah, I think it has taught us, it will teach us some new ways of working. Certainly from the senior team's point of view, we've done most of our meetings on Teams, and it's actually been much better, I think, than all of us had thought. So clearly there's some learnings in that for us in terms of unnecessary travel and time, particularly as a large national covered dealership, group, we've got colleagues all over the country. So we sort of have got 2 bases really in Cambridge and Milton Keynes. And I think we can do much better in the future. So
it's been a very difficult time for businesses when they've been furloughing staff. Culture is very important to Marshalls. How have you managed to manage that in this really difficult time?
We're very conscious of it. Certainly, Dash, our CEO, has been doing one video every week to everybody, supported by the rest of the sort of ExCo, which is myself, John, and our HR director, our finance director, and our company secretary, and we've been doing another video. So every colleague has had, every colleague has had 2 videos a week sent to their personal email addresses, and the feedback has been overwhelming, been really positive. We're now conscious that we sort of have 2 tranches of people we're trying to address: those that are back at work, where it's sort of business, not quite as normal, but nearly, and those that will have anxiety, who are still at home on furlough. We're making sure we communicate with them as well. So telling them all of the things that are going on in the business, what they can expect to see when they come back, and how business is going.
John, when you're seeing these staff return to dealers, what sort of mood are they in?
Really enthusiastic. They're really genuinely pleased to be back. 8, 9, 10 weeks off, they were genuinely happy to come back, and you can see that in the productivity. It's incredible, to be fair, from some of them. So we're still finding we've got people that are still furloughed, but still trying to find out when they can come back. So we've got another tranche. So everyone that's coming back, and it's a long time, 10 weeks actually, when you're restricted on what you can do. When you're used to working, and it can be a challenging job. It can be long hours, but we've looked after them, the people that have come back, and they fully appreciate that, and they're coming back fully enthused, fully charged up, which is great. And long may it continue.
Have you found it tough not being able to communicate with employees in the same way as you would do in normal business?
Not really. In that we've been very focused on what we've had to do, and it really has become all consuming. So we sort of had 3 or 4 weeks. That was the more challenging bit. 3 or 4 weeks when you're winding the business down, because we didn't know how long it was going to go on for. So that was more challenging, not being able to contact them. But once we've managed to do that, we've then spent the last 6 weeks, what are we going to do to bring the business back open? And it's a massive job. When we first started talking about it, I didn't realize in wildest dreams how long or how involved it was going to be, actually, all the things that we'd have to do to get to the point of opening. But we got there. So the last 6 weeks, we had the remote teams working. So we managed our systems that so any customer inquiries or any issues could be diverted to the remote team, and they could deal with those because they were by brand. And then any colleagues of mine that reported to me that were furloughed, their inquiries would get diverted to myself, and then we deal with them that way. So was it ideal? No, it wasn't ideal, but it was manageable.
Were you surprised at how quickly you could shut a business down of such great scale? Yes,
albeit the main part of it we were very, very efficient in closing down the main part, but there were all the bits. There were peripheral bits that on a smaller scale that perhaps weren't thought of. So there were bits that still went on, and we had to make sure that we dealt with. But yeah, listen, we had an idea it was coming. We didn't know the actual point. So when it did happen, I think we were in pretty good shape. And like I say, it's just the smaller bits that you just need to make sure were dealt with as the weeks progressed. But it's still with 130 odd sites and limited people to help close it down fully. It was a challenge.
Jamie, what went through your head when dealerships were told to close?
I'm going to say panic. That's the wrong word, isn't it? I think unknown. I guess I've been in the industry for quite a long time, as John, and we're quite familiar with what we do on a daily basis. So this was all just extremely fresh to us. What's it going to look like? And then immediately, so we kept the franchise directors on furlough, so we could have weekly board calls with them. And I guess like everybody else, Marshall is a well-funded, well-structured, relatively successful business. So we then started to look at what we had to do, and clearly that was all about cash to protect the long term of the business. And I guess there's an element to start with because it's new for everybody, including Dash as CEO. So I guess we were quite collegiate as a senior team. And very quickly you get your head around strategy. What do we need to do? And that then turned into sort of twice weekly exco calls, weekly board calls, and then calls with other members of the team that were on furlough, really about strategizing for when we could open. As you know, Dash is quite active in terms of lobbying government, working with the NFDA, etc. So lots of sort of serious strategizing going on. and then thinking about our colleagues that were on furlough and how we best dealt with them and protect the company at the same time. So it sounds quite serious. You know, a lot of the videos that we put out were sort of fun. We had various people singing and dancing and doing all sorts of stuff, which to try and keep spirits up, to be fair. And that's definitely paid dividends. You know, we can see that we've got an awful lot of goodwill in those colleagues that are now coming back to work and those that are hopefully coming back shortly.
Jamie, I'm just going to turn to a question that's just come in via YouTube from Ben Hollingsworth. He says, do you believe this pandemic will change the way people buy a car in the future? I mean, there's a lot of talk about this, a lot of talk about online car sales becoming more and more important. What are your thoughts?
Yes, I do. But we've had conflicting information for that. And I don't want to sound like a Luddite here, but we've had conflicting information around this for a long number of years. And we generally look to the US market to see. And I think still it's 1% of cars that are transacted end to end online. But there are definitely people out there who have bought cars with us during the period of lockdown who are anxious about coming into dealerships and still are. So will it accelerate that change? Yes, I believe it will.
John, same question to you. I mean, what do you see from your side? Do you see this changing quickly?
I think. Do I see it changing quickly? I think it will change. I'm not. Again, I agree with Jamie. I'm not so sure how quickly it will change. Certainly, I think from a browsing perspective, that's going to increase. It's at a high level anyway. You know, we've got to be in a position where we can transact fully online, which is what we're moving towards in the next, hopefully, 3 to 4 months. So I think from that perspective, the bit for me is that customers will always want to touch it, feel it, drive it. That's what I believe. So I think there's always absolutely a place. And it's at what point does that change where it's, you know, they don't effectively need to visit the dealership. So I certainly think from, you know, a lot of the pre-sale work will increase, but I don't think it will ever get to the point where it replaces everything. I don't.
Another question here, John, from that's coming on YouTube from Jack Bishop. He says he likes the fact that you've both worked your way up through the industry and have got your experience that way. Do you think that, he says, do you think that's important when you get to the senior level in the motor trade, that you've had that experience? And does the fact that people who just come in without that cause problems?
I don't think it causes problems, if I'm honest, because otherwise you would never attract new talent into the industry. But I do think it absolutely helps. You know, in terms of what's happened in the last 10 weeks, I don't think, regardless of any background, I don't think anybody could plan on what was going to happen there. But it certainly helps. It absolutely helps. Yeah, I do.
Jamie, you've clearly seen a lot of growth in Marshalls over the last few years. Do you think that experience that you've gained in most traders has helped you with that?
Yeah, it's been invaluable. As I said to you, I worked my way up through Reg Vardy really, which was a great business. Loved that, and then I went the other end when I started up with Peter and Peter Vardy, where we had no dealerships at all. So it was going from a standing start. So I'd been used to working in a big corporate environment where there were teams of people to help you with everything. You know, if you needed a new wash bay, you phoned up the head of property. If you needed a new phone system, you phoned the IT director. All those things. Going to literally 2 of us starting again, and I was having to look at stuff that I'd never done before. So that was really exciting. So it definitely broadens your knowledge, no doubt about that. But I think, as John said, nothing could really have prepared us for the last 8 or 10 weeks that we've had. But I still think we're in an amazing and fabulous industry. I've got no formal qualifications, got some A-levels, and that's about it. Didn't do the university thing at the start, and it wasn't for me. And find myself in an amazing business where you get to meet all sorts of people, travel all over the place, work with some amazing brands, and it's fantastic. So I still think we are very much an under-admired business that has got so much to offer for all sorts of people from all sorts of backgrounds. There is so much potential in this industry. What's
it been like seeing Marshalls grow at the rate it has done over the last couple of years?
It's fantastic. I think there's a real excitement to a growing organisation. And if I look back, I reflect on my career, even when I was in Reg Vardy, which was another business that grew very quickly. At that point, I was based up in Scotland, but there was still an excitement amongst people at all levels when the company announced they were buying something else, even if it was down in the South Coast or whatever. There's a real energy that's created around a growing business.
And what are the challenges been of integrating those businesses into the Marshalls business?
I suppose the speed at which the company was acquiring. Ridgeway, I think, was seen externally as a seamless transition. And you know Dash well, he's very much a move on. Let's go on to the next thing. So there's obviously detail to go through and stuff, but generally we have incorporated those business. Usually when you do an acquisition, there's always a tendency to say, well, what do we take from the old business? Let's look at all the good things they had. Do we leave it? But we haven't. We've integrated every part of the business, from compliance through to training, through to L&D, the whole lot, to get them fully on board with the Marshall brand. The culture thing, I genuinely believe, takes longer, because that needs to be embedded and stuff. And that's driven very much by the senior team and the franchise directors.
What's it like working for Dash? He's a bit of a workaholic, isn't he? Does he work you guys hard?
I don't know what on earth gives you that impression. No, he's
I
great.
love it. I
love it.
absolutely love it. I love it.
I guess he is typical of a lot of CEOs. Very high energy, very high tempo. And through this, I've got to say, and I said to him personally as well, he's been outstanding in this, because he's quite open the fact he's never done it before as well. And ultimately, whilst John and I will have a view and we'll share it with him, a lot of tough decisions sit with him. So we've been very fortunate and very collegiate as a leadership team.
John, Dash has clearly been incredibly busy. I mean, I think one minute he's talking to the press, next time he's on Sky News, or he's talking to investors. I mean, how does he find the time to talk to you guys?
Hey, listen, to be fair, with Microsoft Teams, it's been a lot easier, to be honest. I don't know how he does it, genuinely. And he's up very, very early in the morning, and he goes to bed very, very early in the morning as well. And he's got Marshall, he's absolutely wedded to the success of Marshall. So he's very passionate about it, very driven by it. And yeah, we get driven very hard. But he is he embraces the feedback we give him. And I will say, just to echo what Jamie said, the last 10 weeks, I think he's been incredible in the coverage that he's managed, or the things that he's managed to cover, but pulling all the team together, and not just the executive committee, but the franchise directors. And he's doing the videos every Tuesday. He's been doing them himself, and they take a long time in itself. But he's doing that because he wants to make sure that every single colleague within Marshall is kept in touch with, and that he gets an awful amount of feedback from those videos, and he answers them all personally. So he literally has got everybody interest. He's got everybody's interest. So I'll take my hat off to him for what he's done over the last 10 weeks. It's been amazing.
I'm surprised he's not emailed a few questions in, actually, John.
Yeah, I've turned my phone the other way. He's probably texted us.
He's been texting me.
On that point, in terms of going forward, we reported this morning that Lookers are looking at cutting 20% of their workforce. There's a lot of dealer groups that I speak to looking to cut jobs. I mean, what do you think is going to happen at Marshalls when it comes to redundancies?
Is that to me or John?
Yeah, either of you.
Yeah, we're not in a position to comment on that yet. Clearly, as I said right at the beginning of the call, we've got to do the very best we can to protect every single one of those jobs where we can, and we still believe there's a huge amount of opportunity. Clearly, it's something we'll consider if necessary, but for us, it would be an absolute last resort. We believe we've done the best that we can. We were trading well up until, I think we put an RNS out earlier this week. We were trading very well up to March into lockdown. We were flying, and we've got to get that momentum back. We've got an awful lot of goodwill across the company, and we intend to keep that momentum going as long as we possibly can. So for us, it would be an absolutely last resort. But we do see clearly what our peers are doing, and perhaps they weren't in as fortunate a position as we were when we went into this. So clearly we don't take any pleasure from that. But from a Marshall point of view, we are absolutely committed to maintaining that momentum and doing a great job over the coming weeks and months.
John, we've seen this morning that sales for May were down again. Obviously, most dealerships were closed. But what are your thoughts going forward for June? I mean, there's a lot of pent-up demand out there, we're hearing. A lot of cars that are going to have to be delivered that were sold during those months. I mean, surely we could end up June on a plus side.
Yeah, I think we looking at the order take that we've had and throughout lockdown and indeed for the first 3 days, certainly new is coming back. is it coming back at the level that we need? I don't think it is yet. The signs aren't there yet. We're getting positive improvements. Will it get to the point of a positive? I think it's going to need to really go some in the next few weeks. But what we haven't done in the last 10 weeks, we haven't really marketed anywhere near the level that we would do. So, all of the other opportunities we've got, fleet is starting to pick up, retail starting to pick up, Motability. There's been some more news on Motability this morning, so it's now starting to get traction. How quickly that takes, we need it to get traction quickly. So, at what point do we start marketing like we did? That's therefore our daily conversations. We haven't landed on that.
Jamie, how do you think the market's going to be affected overall as we go forward over the next few months? I mean, clearly we're going to be in a deep recession. Do you think the car market's going to be able to survive that?
Yeah, I think undoubtedly it will. In what shape, I'm not entirely sure. There's certainly some good indicators around the used car market, which we would echo from what we're seeing, albeit it's only the first few days, as I said earlier. New cars, I think, will be more challenging, but our brand partners will be supportive. They clearly need to sell cars. We see lots of tactical incentives is coming down the hill. There's lobbying going around government support, and there's also other external indicators around people being reticent around using public transport. So that's another opportunity for us. Used car market. I don't see people giving up the independence of car travel easily. They may reassess their budget, etc., in terms of coming down, but I don't see people wholeheartedly jumping out of cars. But you can't get away from the other external economic indicators around job losses, around airlines, Rolls-Royce, etc., etc. So clearly, the general economic outlook will be tricky. But I do believe as a company in Marshall, we are as best placed as we can to take advantage of whatever sits in front of us.
Let's end on a positive from both of you. And
I'm always positive, James. I'm a cup half full man.
Good man. What are you most excited about for the future, Jamie?
Me?
Yeah.
I guess going back to that growth thing, we talked about the excitement of growth, and I believe there'll be opportunities for Marshall in that. We've got 4,300 very excited colleagues wanting to go with it, and a marketplace that is clearly disrupted. I see as a significant opportunity for Marshall and for John and myself and the rest of my colleagues.
John, what about yourself?
I agree. I look forward to welcoming all of the extended family back, and then getting the results back to where we were in March. I think it is a challenge. We set ourselves challenges that we want to achieve quickly. We want to get there sooner rather than later, and we know there's going to be bumps along the road. We absolutely know that, but it's how we deal with them. And I think we've got a capable leadership team that can overcome those bumps along the way. John,
Jamie, thank you very much for your time today. I wish you the best of luck when over the next couple of months. I know it's going to be tricky, but sounds like you've got the right credentials to get it sorted. So best of luck.
Thank you, James.
Thank you very much.
Great
Thank
stuff.
you.
Well, thanks to John and Jamie there for joining me today. Tomorrow we're back with Logistics, who'll be answering your legal questions live, so join us at midday for that. If you want to get involved in Car Dealer Lives like this one, you can email me. It's james@blackbullmedia.co.uk. You'll find me on Twitter @CarDealerEd, or on LinkedIn. Send me a message there. If you want breaking news from Car Dealer Magazine sent direct to your phone, join one of our WhatsApp groups. Just send me a message and I'll send you a link, and that'll get you involved. And if you want a full schedule of Car Dealer Lives coming up, have a look at cardealermagazine.co.uk, head to the Car Dealer Live section, full schedule there. Thanks once again to John and Jamie for giving up their time today, and I'll see you tomorrow. Goodbye.